This seminar is rooted in, I'd say, both information and inspiration. But let's start with the information. Some little known facts. 55% of the residents of Chicago are tenants. Very few people know that. That compares to nationally, 33% of all residents of this country are tenants. So Chicago has a higher incidence of tenant residencies than the rest of the country. However, when we take a look at how tenants are represented by council, at least focusing on eviction court, and I'm going to talk about some data that comes from an excellent study that was done by the Lawyers Committee for Better Housing and Chicago-Kent College of Law, who studied the eviction courts in 2002. And their observations were that only 5% of tenants who were facing evictions, of the 35 or 36,000 who faced evictions in that year, only 5% were represented by counsel. And some of the other speakers are going to talk about what some of the consequences of that are in eviction court when tenants are not represented. There's another study that was done in 2003, it was a Legal Aid Safety Net study, which studied the legal problems of low-income residents of the state of Illinois. And what that study revealed is that the second most common problem that low-income residents of this state face is problems with substandard conditions in their apartments. And among the 20 most serious problems that low-income residents of this state faced were problems receiving their security deposits after they moved out of their apartments, and also defending themselves against evictions. That study also told us that only 1 in 5 low-income residents of this state are able to access legal representation when they need it. So, informationally, what we're first starting with is a huge gap between the legal needs that tenants have and the available representation. In 1978, Alderman David Orr, who was then the alderman of the 49th Ward, introduced an ordinance into the Chicago City Council that sought to provide better balance in the legal rights between landlords and tenants in this state. And that law was introduced every year for about 7 or 8 years, and every year it was killed by Alderman Stone in committee. But eventually, Harold Washington was elected mayor, and balance in the city council swung in his favor. And in 1986, the Chicago Residential Landlord Tenant Ordinance was passed by a vote of 44-3. Once the aldermen realized that this was going to pass, a lot of them jumped on board because most of their constituents are tenants, and they know which side, they know how their bread is buttered. That ordinance was designed to provide more rights to tenants, frankly. I was one of the co-authors of that ordinance, along with Bill Weiland at the National Center for Poverty Law. It's been in effect for more than 20 years now. I think it's proved to be workable. At the time that the ordinance was proposed, real estate interests and landlords predicted that the sky would fall. When the ordinance was challenged in court, Judges Posner and Easterbrook predicted that even though they had to uphold the legality of the ordinance, they predicted that it would result in a large increase in rents in this city and many landlords choosing to no longer be landlords. I don't think that has come to pass either. The ordinance gives tenants many new rights, but most of those rights don't have very much meaning in practice without legal representation. So what we're going to present to you today is some ideas from seasoned attorneys who have practiced in the Chicago courts about how the legal rights of tenants can be better represented. The inspiration for this conference comes from the Metropolitan Tenants Organization, an advocacy group that assist tenants who are having problems all across the metropolitan area. And their hope, and they came to us at Loyola with this hope, is they hope that more private attorneys could get involved in representing tenants, in making their legal rights real. So the purpose of this conference is to try to encourage you, inspire you, give you information about how tenants can be effectively represented in this city and in this state.